Part 102. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 1016. Buzz. At the moment when the military level was successfully broken through, Wang Ling heard the familiar buzzing sound in his head again. A large amount of military experience and memory began to be instilled. At the same time, his body, weapons, and equipment were also undergoing changes to varying degrees. Physically, due to the rules of the system, each type of soldier will be slightly strengthened every time he levels up. Although the intensity of each enhancement is not large, the effect of all the enhancements added together cannot be ignored. Secondly, in terms of weapons, the cannon in his hand was flashing at an extremely fast speed. It was slightly smaller in size, but a little heavier. Its power and rate of fire were also undergoing qualitative changes. Specific powerful geometry? This has yet to be tested. The most important thing is the change of its equipment. This enhancement is different from the previous 1-star veteran to 7-star ace. This enhancement will be fed back to the real world. In order to take into account the convenience of use in the real world, its equipment has also been greatly adjusted by the system. The most important change is that the pair of flying rockets on his back have become more illusory, just like the original magnetic blast infantry device. They are almost imprinted on Wang Ling's back, and they can come at a moment's notice. Once it's gone, you can fly anytime and anywhere when using any military type, which is very convenient. As for the suit, it had become useless. If it weren't for being able to breathe freely in this alien space, Wang Ling could have discarded it, leaving only the pair of flying rockets. To be honest, as a player, Wang Ling has had too many troop experience enhancements in the Red Alert world, but there are not many enhancements that really excite Wang Ling. Previously, there was one Soldier King level enhancement for the Chrono Legionnaires, but now, there is another Soldier King level enhancement for the rocket flying soldiers. Ha ha ha. When the strengthening was completed and he felt the flying rocket on his back, Wang Ling couldn't help but laugh heartily. Efforts will always be rewarded, and the experience he has spent so much time in the alien space is not in vain. The rocket pilot's military gift is really worth his efforts. Whoosh. After laughing, Wang Ling did not hold back his excitement. He breathed out flying rockets and took him to the heights. The speed was more than twice as fast as when he was at the ace level. Not only that, the previous rocket pilots had a very fixed flight trajectory. When they flew to a certain altitude, they could only fly sideways, which was very restrictive. But now, this restriction has disappeared. Wang Ling can fly to different heights at any time and change the flight direction at will. One moment, he was 500 meters above the ground, and the next moment, he was already hurtling forward in an arc-shaped trajectory. At an altitude of 200 meters, the next moment it drew a circle in the air and flew to an altitude of 3,000 meters in an arc. From this height, looking down at the meteorite continent, it looks pitifully small. There is Iron Man in Hollywood movies, who can fly at supersonic speeds and change flight paths at will. Although Wang Ling cannot achieve that kind of flexibility and super speed, he is very satisfied with this kind of gain now. Taking advantage of this mood, Wang Ling flew continuously in the alien space for a long time, fully experiencing the pleasure of flying freely. Gilug. However, before he started trying out his fighting ability, something embarrassing happened. Wang Ling's unsatisfactory stomach actually started to protest. There is no concept of time in the alien space, and Wang Ling doesn't know how long he has gained experience in it, but it should not be short in terms of time. Moreover, when he was promoted to the 10-star Soldier King, that breath also consumed a lot of his energy, and he tried to fly one after another. Wang Ling was indeed hungry now. Uncle Hey, let me go back. Wang Ling did not force himself and contacted Uncle Hey while flying high in the sky. Although this alien space does not belong to the Red Alert world, it is also an incidental product of the Red Alert world. It is naturally under the jurisdiction of the system. As soon as Wang Ling finished speaking, his consciousness returned to the transfer station. Haha, you were wiped out by time and space and sent to an alien space, and you still have the energy to gain experience in the arms. You are really optimistic. Uncle He looked at Wang Ling and laughed. Wang Ling shook his arms and said nonchalantly, "It's not a big deal. You can go back at any time. Isn't it a waste if you don't take advantage of this rare opportunity to gain experience? Come on, Uncle He. I won't be poor with you. I'm so hungry. Let's go back first." Good. After a brief conversation between one person and one mind, Wang Ling returned to the real world. Ahim. Little X bastard is plotting against me and targeting him. Awesome. In the dormitory, the three losers were still staying up late fighting. After Wang Ling woke up, he didn't care about them. He just picked up a bucket of instant noodles and soaked them, and took a few out of Xiao Hei's food. A piece of ham sausage, after some emergency, barely filled my stomach. At this time, the battle between the three losers finally ended, and the big word failure on the screen was particularly funny. These three people often talk about win around and sleep, but it is the slogan that often keeps them up all night long. Wang Ling is no longer surprised by this. "Wang Ling, why did you get up in the middle of the night today to find food?" Wei Bowen asked teasingly while drinking tea. Wang Ling smiled mysteriously, "I have mastered a new skill." After all, Wang Ling's secret was partially revealed to these three people, and through hypnosis, he ensured that the secret would never be leaked. Wang Ling did not hide too much from the three of them. "What skill? Holy shit, really? Try it quickly." As soon as Wang Ling said this, the three of them immediately became interested. After all, if Wang Ling wants to introduce new skills, it will definitely not be simple. Just look at the previous chronotropic and magneto-electric skills. Which one can be mastered by normal people? Hua. Wang Ling didn't interest them too much. He smiled mysteriously, and a set of simple flying rockets suddenly appeared on his back. They were fixed on his body in a semi-illusory way. They sprayed out illusory and bright flames, and slowly lifted Wang Ling up and away from him. It stopped just like this when it was 1 meter above the ground. Holy shit! Holy shit! Holy shit! At first glance, the three of them were dumbfounded when they saw Wang Ling's skill. The two words that came out of their mouths were extremely unified. Teleportation and flying are two abilities that many people have fantasized about, but now Wang Ling has mastered them all. And Wang Ling didn't feel strange about their expressions. He even smiled confidently and took the three of them and Xiao Hei together, and moved through time and space to the roof of the dormitory building. Look at you. Whoosh. After setting up the three people and the dog, Wang Ling rubbed the tip of his nose and, propelled by the rocket, flew directly into the sky, leaving only a series of bright flight trajectories across the night sky, which was extraordinarily flashing and dazzling. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 1017. Whoosh. In the real world, this was Wang Ling's first flight. He had never even flown on an airplane before, so he naturally wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to experience it. Maintaining the rapidity of a King-class rocket pilot, Wang Ling jumped up and down in the air. The light tail of the rocket left a long-lasting and bright trace in the night sky, which was particularly eye-catching. Wang Ling also noticed this light tail, and even got weird. When flying in the air, a trace of the letter W flew out for a while, and a C flew out for a while. S, and then became B. The cow is getting fat. Wang Ling can actually fly. Damn, the more I look at it, the more envious I become. Woof woof. The altitude where he was about 500 meters above the ground, but under the night sky, the traces of his flight were particularly conspicuous. On the roof of the dormitory building, The three injured friends had seen the whole journey, and now they were all dumbfounded. Appearance. Wang Ling did not take care of their mood, and continued to fly in the air for more than 5 minutes. Then his interest waned, and he landed on the roof of the dormitory through a time travel movement. He stretched his cervical spine and said, "It feels good." "You're so happy. Do you know how envious we are?" Dongfang Yuking complained. Wei Bowen joked, "Use the light tail to draw patterns. If you don't draw something good looking, others can draw 1 stone and 2 hearts. You are good at drawing WC and S.B. You really don't do what you want." Zhang Shen nodded seriously, second the proposal. Woof woof, Xiao He also joined in the fun. Wang Ling was embarrassed and just smiled, but didn't answer anything. Dongfang Yuking laughed with a sly eyebrow, "Brother Ling. Don't call me that, what do you want to do?" Wang Ling was startled by the title. He was used to being insulted, but this sudden politeness was definitely not good. As expected, Dongfang Yuking actually asked, "You were able to take us with you through teleportation before, but can you do this with your flying ability? Give us a rocket too." "Good idea." Zhang Shenkei's eyes also lit up. Wang Ling couldn't laugh or cry for a while. "If I can, I really want to do it, but the ability to fly is not the same as teleportation, and I don't have the ability to put a rocket on you. However, if you want to fly, I can consider hugging you. Come with you. Hurry up and pull her down. You can go ahead and hug us, then throw her to us." Wei Bowen blurted out one sentence, which made everyone at the scene laugh. Of course, envy is envy, but the three of them don't have any jealousy. After all, they had already accepted Wang Ling's abnormality and were even somewhat used to it. After having fun for a while, Wang Ling waved his hand and said generously, "Come on, brothers, go back and change clothes. Let's go have supper. Eat as much as you want, I'll pay for it." "Good. If he can't fly with him, then he will be killed." After hearing this, the three of them unanimously agreed. As for the location of this late-night snack, it is a bit particular. Naturally, it is impossible to make do around the school. After all, it is late at night and there are very few open stores. After some deliberation, the 4 people and 1 dog simply teleported to the capital. After having a storm in a high-end restaurant, they also spent some time in a bar. The 3 of them were half drunk before returning to the dormitory of the International Village School, regardless of whether what's the slogan of "win around and go to bed." I fell asleep while lying on the bed. After this debauchery, Wang Ling was not as excited as before. He played with Xiao He for a while and then fell asleep. The next day, the 4 of them slept until noon before waking up. After staying in bed, washing up, and having lunch, Wei Bowen suddenly shouted, "I'm going to kill you, brothers, hurry up and read the news." "What?" The 3 of them were confused and quickly opened the local news on their mobile phones. When they saw it, they all had their mouths broken. It turns out that when Wang Ling was soaring in the sky last night, someone actually filmed it and posted it online. The iconic WC and S.B letters were given a striking close-up, and the news headline was that a UFO appeared in a certain place, suspected to be an alien aircraft. After reading these contents, Wang Ling was subconsciously afraid. It was late at night last night, and everyone must have slept, so he flew at a low altitude and indulged himself for a while. However, he didn't expect that there were still many night owls awake. I don't know who was so curious that he took a picture of it. However, after reading the comments below, Wang Ling felt relieved. Because of the funny letters, almost everyone who watched the news did not buy it. Many people directly claimed that it was sensationalism and computer-generated. Some radicals even said that their IQs were insulted because of the 2 sets of letters. Of course there are some who truly believe it, but they are very few, and the comments were quickly pushed to the bottom. Ha ha ha. As for those bad friends, After reading these comments, they are really laughing. In fact, there are countless similar rumors in the real world. Because of those true rumors, even if they really see some incomprehensible news, it is difficult for the public to believe it, including Wang Ling's news this time. I thought it would be widely disseminated, but I didn't expect that in the end, the news was completely criticized. It was quickly submerged in numerous entertainment gossips and did not spread for long at all. This also made Wang Ling feel relieved a lot. On this day, life was routine, and soon it was night. Now, all the arms that Wang Ling can switch to have reached the level of King of Soldiers. He has received gifts from the real world and has no regrets. Even if he no longer goes to the red alert world, there is nothing wrong with him. However, everything has a beginning and an end. Now that the two armies are fighting for supremacy, Wang Ling can't let go until the outcome is reached. He simply follows his past habits and returns to the red alert world again, coming to that alien space. The conditions in the real world did not allow it, but in this alien space, Wang Ling had no scruples. He had not tested his attack ability before leaving last time. Taking advantage of the current conditions, Wang Ling drew a very sharp arrow in the night sky and rushed towards a nearby meteorite continent. He found a tornado tank as a target and used a rocket machine gun to bombard it with high frequency. It exploded in a moment. The attack power of the rocket pilots at the King of Soldiers level has increased sharply, and the rate of fire has also increased exaggeratedly. The overall attack ability is almost 10 times stronger than that at the elite level. Of course, this is not the main thing. After all, there are restrictions on the types of troops. No matter how powerful the firepower of the rocket pilots is, they cannot be stronger than the elite combat soldiers. But now, Wang Ling has combined the two together, carrying the elite combat soldiers in the air. The rifle swept across the many enemy tanks below, wiping out all the enemy tanks on the entire meteorite continent at an extremely exaggerated speed. The results of this test surprised Wang Ling again and again. The elite combat soldier is already extremely powerful, but now that he has the ability to fly, who else can defeat him? That's right. Now that you've gained enough experience, it's time to go back. Allies, tremble. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 1018. Wang Ling's current vitality is so strong that it is difficult to kill him with ordinary attacks. Only by focusing on a fierce attack can he be eliminated at an extremely heavy price. However, Wang Ling had the strongest mobility. The way the soldiers of the King of Soldiers Super Time Corps moved, Wang Ling could avoid fatal dangers at any time, without giving the enemy a chance to surround him. It is really not an easy task to design such a powerful Wang Ling. Allied General William thought for a long time before finally choosing the same Chrono Legionnaire, and using Tanya as bait, he really caught Wang Ling and wiped him out of the Red Alert world. This action was originally intended to completely eliminate Wang Ling and get rid of this threat. However, the Allies may not have expected that Wang Ling was not only fine, but also completed another upgrade of his military experience in the alien space. In the originally powerful on the basis of this, he has mastered the ability to fly flexibly and even combine with other arms, making the threat even greater than before. Of course, when Wang Ling returned this time, he had no intention of going back alone. After he made up his mind, he spent a long time searching the major meteorite continents and collected all the meteorites he could encounter. All the armored units that still had vitality were gathered together. To break it down, this batch of armored units includes 3 Apocalypse tanks, 1 of which is elite level, 16 Rhino tanks, 4 of which are elite level, and 4 anti-aircraft crawlers, none of which are elite level. Of course, this batch of armored troops is only a part of the alien space coalition forces. In the past wars for hegemony, The Allies had wiped out too many armored troops. However, the other armored units were either damaged or had drifted to places that were difficult to find, and Wang Ling was unable to track all the tanks. Looking at the group of tanks and vehicles in front of him, Wang Ling took a deep breath and murmured, "Guys, you are still fighting in this dark space. Thank you for your hard work. Now, I will take you back to where you should be. The battlefield belongs to you." Swish. As soon as he finished speaking, Wang Ling released a large-scale space-time fluctuation circle. At the same time, his body had also strengthened into the form of the Wild Beast King. Although Wang Ling can carry many troops to move across time and space, he needs to bear the tearing pressure on his behalf, and the number of troops he can carry at a time cannot be too many. The armored troops to be taken away this time actually exceeded the limit of what Wang Ling had tried in the past, but Wang Ling still did it. He really couldn't bear to see the coalition troops just waiting to die in the dark space. Whoosh! After Wang Ling's body strengthened to the limit, this cross-border movement that no one had ever attempted finally began. With the sound of teleportation, Wang Ling and a group of armored troops suddenly disappeared. Red alert world, a battlefield between two armies. Rush! Damn it, Allied forces, you grandma, just wait for me. Speed up, I'm going to kill Tanya myself. Buzz buzz buzz. Even though Wang Ling spent a long time in the alien space, there is actually a very obvious difference in time between the two spaces. In today's Red Alert world, Wang Ling and the four major field teams under General Luo Er have been assembled, and they are still there. On the way to charge, they failed to get close to where Tanya's troops were. The coalition generals in other regions, and even PoortoRich, were still angrily scolding General Luo Er, but the Allies were already happy. Several major regions had quietly gathered in private, preparing to take the opportunity to completely destroy these four concessions. They were in the field group on pins and needles. But at this moment, whoosh! Where Wang Ling originally disappeared, a large trace of supertemporal fluctuation suddenly appeared. From it emerged Wang Ling, who was bruised due to forcibly carrying too many tanks, as well as traces of a large number of coalition armored troops. Wang Ling. How can it be? Wasn't he wiped out by the Chrono Legion soldiers? Why is he back again? Wang Ling. Where did he come from? Shouldn't he be dead? As for the Allied forces, after seeing Wang Ling's figure, they were shaken up and down. Everyone was stunned and a chill rushed from the soles of their feet to the top of their heads, almost chilling their whole bodies. They paid such a heavy price to design Wang Ling and successfully erase him. But how long has it been since then? Why is he back? Team leader. General. Holy crap, the team leader isn't dead. Wang Ling. It's strange that you can come back after being wiped out. And you also brought back a group of armored troops. What's going on? In fact, the surprise of the coalition forces was worse than that of the non-allied forces, but the difference was that the allies were more frightened, while the coalition forces were more surprised. Whoosh! Whoosh! Naturally, the most horrified ones were Tanya and the Chrono Legion soldiers and multifunctional infantry vehicles that had attacked Wang Ling before. If Wang Ling reappeared, they would be in danger. After a brief period of shock, the previous batch of Chrono Legion soldiers wanted to retarget Wang Ling and eliminate him again. But... buzz. Oh. Oh ho. Boom. Wang Ling was controlled before, mainly because of mental arithmetic and unintentional calculations, and his rhythm was disrupted. Now that he is prepared, are he still afraid of this trick? Even though he was covered in bruises and his combat effectiveness was slightly affected, he was still more than enough to deal with these miscellaneous soldiers. His eyes narrowed, and he suddenly released a powerful mental shockwave, which instantly exploded the group of Chrono Legion soldiers and multifunctional infantry vehicles, exposing the few Chrono Legion soldiers hiding in the vehicles. Whoosh! When Wang Ling released a shockwave and was exhausted, the soldiers of the Chronospace Legion immediately moved forward, still determined to control Wang Ling. But as soon as they started moving, Wang Ling suddenly made a sudden dash and flew high into the air in a very tricky arc. He raised his rifle and shot the legionnaires dead. He's getting stronger again. Using a rifle in the air? What a pervert! This illegal act shocked both armies. One was horrified, the other surprised. Even Tanya was confused. Whoosh! But before she could recover, Wang Ling moved through time and space and landed next to Tanya. He reached out and grabbed her by the throat and picked her up. Tanya, we meet again. Wang Ling grabbed Tanya's neck and smiled lightly. Tanya held Wang Ling's right hand with both hands. After struggling for a moment, she gave up and said with difficulty, Wang Ling, why are you still alive? Did I disappoint you? Wang Ling asked playfully. However, Tanya said, I don't know whether to be happy or shocked. This answer surprised Wang Ling slightly. He was stunned for a moment, then shook his head and sighed, when I was controlled before, I heard everything you said. You, as a hero of the Allied forces, even are your positions so vacillating? If you want to say hate, of course I hate you. Don't forget that there is hatred between you and me. Snort. Tanya was obviously not convinced by this statement, and her hands quickly reached to her waist, as if she was about to take out her guns to resist. However, when he touched the double guns, he gave up. Wang Ling watched this whole scene, but was unmoved at all. If Tanya really took out her guns, Wang Ling would be able to electrocute her until her skin was torn apart before she could shoot. To put it bluntly, Agent Tanya's life is now entirely in Wang Ling's hands. Seemingly realizing this, Tanya simply gave up her resistance and closed her eyes. If you want to kill me or chop me into pieces, just do it. You accept your fate so quickly? It's boring. Click. Wang Ling muttered, and with a strong movement of his wrist, he immediately broke Tanya's neck. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 1019. Click. The crisp cracking sound was too crisp and the sound was obviously not loud, but for the entire Allied forces, it seemed to be deafening and made the hearts tremble. The dignified hero of the Allied forces, a first-generation agent, lieutenant general, and the goddess of war for all the Allied forces, died like this? The coalition forces were also a little surprised. They all stared at the electronic video, not sure whether Tanya was dead or not. But Wang Ling didn't care about these looks at all. After killing Tanya with his own hands, he didn't mess with Tanya's body and slowly lowered her body. Not long after, the body slowly disappeared under the rules of the system. Seeing this scene, both sides of the war finally confirmed that Tanya was dead. Hiss. General Tanya. Sir Tanya. She really died like that? Tanya. The Allied forces were shaken up and down. Seeing the tragic death of the Allied heroes, many officers and soldiers were stunned. Everyone in the general headquarters, including General Bob and General William, were also going crazy. However, this kind of madness was actually but it was just to cover up the chill that came from his bones. Just like Wang Ling's position in the Allied forces, Tanya also has an important position within the Allied forces. She is a hero and role model of the Allied forces, and is the spiritual support of many Allied soldiers. But now, this pillar is broken like this, it's like the sky has fallen, and morale has almost plummeted. Good. Ha ha ha, the Allies have heroes, and so do our coalition forces, and they are stronger than yours. I was worried before that Wang Ling would be cruel enough to kill Tanya. Now it seems that I was overly worried. Wang Ling is much more decisive than I thought. That's what you should do. Well done, team leader. On the other hand, after the coalition forces confirmed the news of Tanya's death, the entire army became excited. Tanya's existence was actually a big threat to the coalition forces. Of course, the more important thing is that Tanya's death is a huge blow to the Allies. As the enemy camp, the more the enemy is hit, the happier they will naturally be. Well, as for Wang Ling, the two armies showed two completely different emotions, but his reaction was very strange. Staring at Tanya's disappearing body, he sighed silently, and there was no sadness or joy in the expression on his face. After the body completely disappeared, Wang Ling did not wait until night and returned directly to the transfer station. While his physical injuries were gradually healing, Uncle Hay also took the opportunity to make fun of her. Looking at your mood, something seems not right. What's wrong? Is it because you couldn't bear to kill your lover with your own hands? Wang Ling rolled her eyes at him. No one is serious. Tanya is a program, how can she be my lover? Uncle Hay asked, do you really just think of her as a program? Wang Ling was suddenly speechless. The strangeness of the red alert world makes it difficult for Wang Ling to really regard the people and things in it as programs. In the real world, how many people know that Xiao He is a program? The same is true for Agent Tanya. However, Wang Ling did not dwell on this issue for too long. After he almost recovered from his injuries, he relaxed a little and said, Uncle Hay, temporary exchange, Tanya. Was he really completely merciless by killing Tanya so simply? That is naturally impossible, because the enemy characters he killed can still be redeemed through the system, and only by killing them can they be redeemed. Snapped. Uncle Hay was straightforward. Without saying a word, he just snapped his fingers, and then Tanya slowly walked out of the black whirlpool. And the moment she appeared, she had already received the introduction of the system in her mind and knew her identity. However, the girl was still deeply impressed by her memory before her death. After she appeared, she didn't wait for Wang Ling to speak. She rubbed her neck and looked at Wang Ling resentfully. You are so cruel. You didn't hesitate at all when you killed me, no? Wang Ling also smiled. Why should I hesitate? It's not like I can't see you anymore. How can you show up here without killing you? And don't forget, there is indeed a grudge between us. You're done, right? You've been talking about your grudges, and now you're satisfied. You've already killed me, do you still want to hold grudges? Can't you kill me completely here? Tanya asked angrily. These words really amused Wang Ling. He shook his head with a smile and said, no, Red Alert World has already killed you, and the revenge has been avenged. That's not bad. Tanya's face gradually softened, she took a few breaths, looked at the environment in the transfer station, and then complained, I just said that we are both hero units, why are you so much better than me? It turns out you are a player. Wang Ling, if you are always at the same level as me, I don't believe you are stronger than me. I'm quite competitive, but what's the point of this assumption? If I'm not a player, can you see me? Can you stand here and talk to me? Wang Ling asked a few words, but Tanya was speechless. Said. While Tanya was at a loss for words, Wang Ling acted rogue and used his identity as a player to issue an order, come here and rub your shoulders for me. You. Why does Tanya like this kind of work? She was inevitably unhappy, but there was nothing she could do about it. Wang Ling was her boss now, and she couldn't resist even if she wanted to die. She could only obediently step forward and hit Wang Ling on the shoulder. However, during the beating, Tanya was surprised, because the fist hitting Wang Ling's body did not feel like massaging someone, but rather like beating the iron sheet of a tank. Why is your body so hard? Tanya asked in surprise. Wang Ling was stunned and shook his arms, I don't feel it. Tanya stopped talking. After beating him silently for a while, the girl seemed to be sentimental again. Hey, Wang Ling, what are you going to do in Red Alert World? I'm dead. I'm afraid the Allies don't have the fighting power to resist you. Are you going to take the opportunity to destroy all the Allied troops? This is a problem. If the battle for hegemony really has to be decided, one side will inevitably be crippled. The battle for hegemony has been going on for so long, and Wang Ling has undoubtedly experienced the cruelty of the war, and he really doesn't want to continue fighting to the end. After pondering for a moment, Wang Ling interrupted Tanya's massage and thought, I don't want to fight anymore, but the allies will obviously not be convinced, so we have to find a way to force them to shake hands and make peace. Well, we have it. Any solution? It's pointless to say it in advance, just wait and see. Wang Ling now has an idea and plans to implement it immediately. However, just as he was about to return to the red alert world, Tanya stopped him again. Wait a moment. You let me watch, but I redeemed it temporarily and will disappear soon. How do you want me to watch? I don't care, I want to redeem it permanently. Hey, why are you so annoying? I don't care, if you don't agree I won't let you in. Okay, I'm scared of you. Uncle hey, exchange it permanently, Tanya. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 1020. Hee, this is right. Tanya smiled. How could she look like an allied hero or war goddess now? Clearly a little daughter-in-law's sense of déjà vu. Wang Ling was a little helpless, covered his face and sighed, ignored her, turned around and entered the world of Red Alert. During the period of communication with Tanya in the transit station, the Red Alert world was in a static state. Returning here again, it was still at that point in time, and Agent Tanya's body had just disappeared. Team leader. Ha ha ha, you are indeed a pervert. Wang Ling was still thinking about his previous experience, when Sun Dehu's voice suddenly came from the radio. Although Wang Ling has been promoted, he can serve as the commander of the 4 major field groups, but the people in the Wolf group are still accustomed to calling Wang Ling the group leader, and Wang Ling is too lazy to care about this title. Ever since Wang Ling was wiped out to the alien space, the 4 major field teams have quickly gathered and rushed here. Now after such a long time of running, they finally arrived. As soon as Sun Dehu finished speaking, the anti-aircraft crawler vehicle in the front row the army had already arrived here in batches, and then everyone in the 4 field groups got out of the car in unison, making the originally empty venue look a little more crowded in an instant. Seeing Sun Dehu's excited look, Wang Ling couldn't help laughing and scolding, "Are you a tiger? I'm not dead, so why are you so impulsive?" Sun Dehu was stunned for a moment, then touched his big head and said with a silly smile, "I thought you were dead." Ah! Team leader, don't listen to Brother Hu's nonsense. Isn't this a curse on you? Erlu started to make trouble. Chen Tong also laughed loudly and said, "You are indeed my role model. Even if you are so powerful, even the fluctuations in time and space can't kill you, but you can take care of Tanya." Sun Chiming and Li Sigwang, the leader of the Fox group, also laughed and started to fight. Although there was a big difference in military ranks, they were not so polite with Wang Ling. Wang Ling was a bit dumbfounded and reprimanded him on the spot. "I told you, what are you doing for food? It's a good thing I'm still alive, otherwise I would really be dead. You brought everyone here, and you didn't play into the hands of the allies. Have you finished serving it in one pot?" Hey. The 4 people, as well as many captains and team members, were all giggling and did not dare to contradict this question. Of course, Wang Ling reprimanded him verbally, but in fact he felt full of warmth in his heart. These lovely subordinates deserved to be so loved. After sighing, Wang Ling turned around and looked at the allied position and smiled slyly, "Since you're here anyway, I won't train you anymore. Let's take this opportunity to go to the allied position and have some fun. Beat them as much as it hurts, Quan takes it as revenge." Ah! Team leader, do General Luo Er and the coach agree with such a sudden advance? Wang Ling is still alive, and Sun Dehu is not as aggressive as before, and he is still worried now. Wang Ling asked instead, "I am also a lieutenant general and a commander. Don't I still have the right to attack the Allies? He, yes, yes. Team leader, this is a good order. We have long disliked the Allies, so we just have to go and have a shot. With Wang Ling at his side, what else is there to be afraid of? Sun Dehu and the other three team leaders responded one after another. After the subsequent armored units arrived one after another, and after a brief gathering here, the four field groups collectively launched a fierce attack on the Allied positions in District 10, with no concealment of their purpose. In fact, the Allied base in District 10, relying on the cover of the crack generator, was secretly accumulating strength when Wang Ling was wiped out and the four major field teams assembled, trying to destroy this ace team and seize the opportunity. Meritorious. But now that Wang Ling is still alive, his intimidation power alone is more terrifying than the four field teams combined. He led his team to attack, and the two Allied bases in the 10th district were all panicked and hurriedly asked for help from the surrounding area. And took out the strongest armored force lineup and tried to hold on. However, how can these two bases be the opponents of Wang Ling and the four major field teams? As they arrived, the two Allied bases immediately received a strong impact. In order to contain Wang Ling, the two Allied bases took the lead in sending nearly 100 rocket pilots out of the base to attack Wang Ling. However, Wang Ling moved through time and space and kept the same flying troops. From the center of the group of flying soldiers, a strong mental shockwave was released, and all the nearly 100 rocket flying soldiers exploded in an instant. When these rocket pilots participated in the war, they may have thought about many outcomes and ways to die, but no matter what they thought, they probably never imagined that they would be killed by a mental shockwave. Subsequently, the four major field groups arrived. Although they clearly had very powerful firepower, they still used armed helicopters to bombard the Allied base step by step. After that, the Apocalypse tanks and Rhino tanks began to drive in. The infantry team followed closely, focusing on taking care of the power plant. After the power plant was exploded, the base lost power, and the anti-aircraft missiles lost power. Wang Ling became even more unscrupulous. He flew directly into the air and fired a burst of fanaticism with his rifle. The air defense efficiency of the Allied base is far less than that of the coalition forces, and the means of air defense are limited. After the power is cut off, they mainly rely on multifunctional infantry vehicles for air defense. However, this is also the focus of Wang Ling's care. Relying on its ultra-long range, the air defense is immediately available. Destroy all multipurpose infantry vehicles. Laser UFOs are a variable, and there are also many Allied bases. However, this thing can withstand Wang Ling's anti-aircraft guns for a long time, but it cannot withstand Wang Ling's rifle fire. Under focused targeting, the laser UFO army was defeated by Wang Ling. Ling was exhausted to death. The rocket pilots had already been killed by the shockwave, and the only remaining air defense troops were heavily armed soldiers. However, this type of infantry is very powerful at attacking armored troops, but bombarding infantry is like scraping. Hitting Wang Ling is just like itching. Even if he is hiding in a battle fortress, he can't hit Wang Ling at all, but he will shoot him quickly. Kill. Da-da-da-da-da. Da-da-da-da-da. Boom. 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 Under such rapid fire, a large number of Allied armored units exploded, leaving no one intact. When the armored troops were about to be wiped out, he flew above the heads of the infantry and released a powerful and widespread electromagnetic attack with his right hand. In 1 or 2 seconds, 50 or 60 infantry were killed. The efficiency was so high that it was simply shocking. People are afraid. Rumble. Rumble. Da-da-da. Da-da. The four major field groups were not far behind. Wang Ling wiped out most of the combat power, and they swept across all the buildings in groups. In just one charge, they wiped out an entire base. Wang Ling has now upgraded all the units he is optimistic about to the top level. Several types of convenient and powerful units are integrated together. The combat power unleashed has seriously damaged the balance of the battle. With him here, the Allies really can't stand a chance. There is hope of winning. Now that he has chosen to attack this time, Wang Ling will certainly not be satisfied with just this base. Another Allied base in District 10 was quickly wiped out by him and the 4 major field teams, and then moved to District 9 and even District 8. A total of 4 Allied bases were destroyed, and a large number of Allied reinforcements were killed along the way. In just one battle, the Allies were frightened. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 1021. His. Crazy. Wang Ling is really crazy. He destroyed 4 of our bases in one breath. How can we fight this battle? Wang Ling has become so strong that we cannot match him. His design failed again. What should we do? I'm worried now that he won't be satisfied and will continue to attack. We don't have a base that can stop him. With his way of fighting, what's the point of this battle for hegemony? With the fierce retaliatory attack by Wang Ling and the 4 major field groups, the Allies felt chills running down their spines. Happy. Sure enough, only by following the team leader can we fight so heartily. Why don't we take advantage of this opportunity and destroy all the Allied bases at once? On the battlefield, many soldiers were also shouting. Although they had been accustomed to victory after fighting with Wang Ling, this attack, which destroyed 4 Allied bases in one go, and the fruitful results, also made them feel elated. Wang Ling, you liar! Before Wang Ling had time to suppress this group of fanatics, Tanya's voice came through his mind. We agreed to reconcile, why are you beating the Allies to death? Tanya had been watching Wang Ling fight in the transit station. As a hero of the Allied forces, she couldn't help but feel unbearable when she saw the miserable state of the Allied forces. Wang Ling now feels a little bit regretful about permanently exchanging Tanya, this ancestor. However, Wang Ling did not give in, but retorted, reconciliation, do I have the final say? Do you think it is possible to just talk to the Allies about reconciliation like this? If you don't push the Allies to a certain level, how can you maybe there's reconciliation? But. Alas, Tanya still wanted to refute, but when she thought about it, it was exactly what Wang Ling said. The conflict between the 2 armies has been going on for a long time. It is not easy to shake hands and make peace. She can only sigh, and then asked, have you hit enough now? Humph. Wang Ling smiled and said nothing. Instead of answering Tanya, he suppressed the other 4 field groups. Come on, everyone is so arrogant. What kind of posture is it? It's ugly. He, team leader, no matter how ugly he is, the Allies are uglier than us anyway. That's right, team leader, let's continue attacking the base in Area 7. No need, we've fought enough for now. Let's return to base. Team leader, can't we take advantage of the victory and pursue it? Dogs will jump over walls when they are anxious, and rabbits will bite when they are anxious. There is no need to push them so hard, retreat. Yes. Following Wang Ling's order, the 4 field groups, like tigers and wolves, finally embarked on their return journey. After seeing their movements, many Allied commanders and generals in the headquarters breathed a sigh of relief. If Wang Ling continues to attack, they may not be able to catch it. But as Wang Ling said, rabbits will bite when they are anxious, and dogs will jump over the wall when they are anxious. If they are pushed too hard, even Bob cannot guarantee what kind of crazy behavior they will do. After this fierce battle, the terrifying deterrent power of Wang Ling and the 4 major field groups had shocked the entire Allied forces. They retreated leisurely, but not a single Allied base dared to come forward to harass them. Let them return to base leisurely. Ha ha ha, Wang Ling, you are my god. I thought you were dead, but you are good. Not only are you fine, you are even stronger. You destroyed 4 Allied bases in a row, my dear. Inside the base, Luo had already left the command post to greet him personally. When he saw Wang Ling, he smiled so excitedly. On the way back, Wang Ling heard Sun Dehu talk about Luo's urging to send troops. Although this was too aggressive, his concern for Wang Ling was undoubtedly reflected. Of course, Luo was not the only one who was excited at this time. Almost all the officers and soldiers of the coalition army were excited. They even used the radio to congratulate Wang Ling and Luo. Richie also participated in this, but his celebration was only for Wang Ling. After praising Wang Ling, he scolded Luo and gave him a major demerit. It's all about caring, but Luo's approach was indeed too unwise and willful. If something happened to Wang Ling at that time, the 4 field groups would also be in danger. However, General Luo could see that Wang Ling had returned safely, so he would admit it. After some excitement, the atmosphere of the coalition forces gradually returned to calm, and all major bases were preparing for offensive troops. The Allies, however, seemed to have been blinded. They had been standing still and seemed to be too afraid to take the initiative to attack again. During the battle for hegemony, there was still relatively little time for real heated battles. More time was spent on confrontation and development. However, during this period of time, Wang Ling did not stay in the base. Instead, he traveled through time and space to the headquarters. PoortoRich. Is there any way for me to meet with the top leadership of the coalition forces? I have something to do with them. After some greetings, Wang Ling made clear his purpose without going through too many detours. Richie was surprised. I do have the right to introduce you, but why are you looking for them? Wang Ling replied confidently, it's about the battle for hegemony. I want to use some means to end this damn battle for hegemony early. What method? Is it reliable? Rich didn't dare to agree easily. After all, he was facing the top leadership of the coalition. If it wasn't reliable, it would be a joke. But Wang Ling swore a promise, don't worry, I won't speak easily if I'm not sure. When the time comes, you should also listen and see. Wang Ling was left to spend the night at the headquarters. The next day, he received permission from the top leadership to meet with this legend of the coalition to hear what he had to say. Following Richie's instructions, Wang Ling traveled across time and space to the capitals of the coalition forces and arrived at the highest meeting place, outside the Red Tower. Although it was in the Red Alert world, even Richie was a little nervous on this occasion, let alone Wang Ling. After the stiff time was over, Wang Ling took a breath, suppressed the tension in his heart, cheered up, and followed Richie straight into the Red Tower. There were many guards in the Red Tower, all of them elite soldiers. After seeing Chi and Wang Ling, they all performed military salutes. The 2 of them did not return the greetings one by one, and went directly up the spiral staircase to the top floor and arrived at the most centralized conference hall. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 1022. Squeak. Outside the meeting hall of the Supreme Central Assembly, 2 elite guards gave PoortoRich and Wang Ling a military salute, and then opened the door to the most solemn hall one by one. As the crack in the door gradually widened, Wang Ling also saw the scene in the hall and couldn't help but be a little stunned. Because it was almost full of people. Wang Ling's military rank is indeed not low. He is already a first-generation lieutenant general, and he can fully serve as a battlefield commander and rebuke Fang Qiu. However, this military rank may be very high on the battlefield, but in front of the top leadership of the coalition forces, it is still somewhat insufficient. However, although he is only at the level of lieutenant general, Wang Ling is a very unique figure. Even the top leadership has heard about his heroic title, as well as his powerful combat effectiveness and deterrence. If it were another lieutenant general who wanted to meet with the top leadership, he would have to wait until there was a major meeting. But this time, all the leaders opened a back door for Wang Ling and temporarily agreed and organized this meeting. A meeting just to meet this legendary hero. The layout in the hall is actually very simple. It is not much different from other conference rooms, except that there are more coalition logos. However, those sitting on the conference table were heavyweights competing against each other. Not counting Wang Ling for the time being, Rich's coaching rank here is already at the lowest level, and this time he also has Wang Ling's glory, and he is the only coach in the game. One level above is the marshal level, such as Marshal Lunan, who once personally wore military titles and medals for Wang Ling. However, these 5 marshals only sat at the end of the conference table on this occasion. There were a total of 18 people sitting in the main seat, 3 of whom were wearing coalition military uniforms, with various military medals hanging on their chests, and the Generalissimo epaulets on their shoulders. The other 15 people are dressed a little differently. Some are more like real-world suits and leather shoes, some are wearing white shirts, some are black shirts, and some are wearing classic yellow robes, which look a bit like ancient times. Dragon robe. Although they were not wearing military uniforms, the aura of these 15 people made the atmosphere of the entire conference hall extremely depressing. Most people would not even dare to take a breath when they came here. The coalition is not a country, but a very large coalition with 15 member states, and those 15 people are the kings and kings of these 15 member states. The kings of all member states, plus the general marshal of the entire force, are the top leadership of the coalition. In contrast, the marshals at the end of the conference table lost much momentum under these people. Why was Rich able to lead the battle as the commander of the coalition forces just in his capacity as the head coach? To put it bluntly, it was the result of competition among these 15 member countries. As a senior military officer of the leading country, Coach Rich stood out in the competition and took up the post of commander. Times make heroes. Of course, today's protagonist is not Coach Rich, but Wang Ling. Seeing the many sharp stares in the conference room, Wang Ling inevitably felt nervous. However, he was still a player after all. Wang Ling forced himself to act, dispelling the nervousness, and walked into the hall with Coach Richie with a smile on his face. Coach Rich sat at the end consciously, while Wang Ling, at the signal of a generalissimo, stepped onto the podium in front of the conference table, stood on it and gave a military salute very naturally, and asked the leaders hello. Ha ha ha, are you Wang Ling? You are younger than I thought. Not bad, not bad. At such an age, he has already reached the level of lieutenant general. He has a promising future. You are young and promising, he is much better than us old guys. Neither humble nor arrogant, considering your mental endurance at your age, you can do it. However, these leaders did not embarrass Wang Ling. They were not as difficult to deal with as they imagined. After looking at Wang Ling for a long time, they actually praised him one by one. The original depressive atmosphere was somewhat relieved. Facing this group of heavyweights, Wang Ling didn't dare to show off. He smiled slightly and quickly thanked and humbled himself. After such a meeting, the king of country S got straight to the point and asked, I heard from Richie that you want to tell us about the war for hegemony and want to end the war as soon as possible. A general marshal then asked, is there any way you can destroy all the allied troops in one go? With your combat effectiveness, it's not surprising, but you can just tell Rich about this kind of thing. As for running to his hunta coming, it's better to go straight to the topic to save Wang Ling from being embarrassed all the time. At the mention of this, Wang Ling felt emboldened, took a deep breath, and asked, before I propose, I would like to ask first, what do the leaders think of this battle for hegemony? Are you really planning to take advantage of this? Is this an opportunity to severely inflict a heavy blow on the Allies, seize the title of global hegemon, and monopolize global resources? That's natural. The world belongs to us. Why should the Allies fight for it? Who are they? A general answered without thinking. The highest-ranking general of this army, who has experienced hundreds of battles, also speaks like this. So arrogant. Some leaders also responded, that's right. Our alliance has been fighting for hegemony for a long time. No one is convinced by anyone. How can we stop if we don't get a result? Do you even need to ask? This question received almost a unanimous response, all of which were about fighting to the end, defeating the Allies, and winning hegemony and resources. Of course, there were some generals who kept thinking and did not answer this question. Wang Ling was not surprised. Instead, he asked, if you really want to finish the war for hegemony, then why did you not wait for the decision to continue the war after the collapse of the Seoul Empire? Instead, you passively responded to the provocation of the Allies. This Wang Ling's question was put aside, and all the leaders at the scene actually showed a little embarrassment. After pondering for a while, the king of country S explained, you are very keen, and you have noticed such details. Now that we have talked about it, then to tell you the truth, after the collapse of the Seoul Empire, we did discuss for a long time, war or peace. At that time, we were actually divided into two factions. One faction advocated war and did not want to give up the status of overlord and global resources, the other faction advocated peace. They did not want to continue to escalate the war, so they thought of the friendship during the alliance and resolved the dispute through negotiation. However, no one from the two factions gave in. The discussions could not produce a result, so they delayed for a while until the Allies made a decision to continue. After the decision to go to war, our lord and faction compromised and agreed to continue the war for hegemony. After hearing this, Wang Ling nodded as expected. As expected, many of the leaders of this group wanted to have a truce. Since this is the case, it will be easier to handle. Wang Ling smiled and raised the topic again, chiefs, actually, whether it is war or peace, looking at it now, it is still a problem. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 1023. Oh. Didn't you come up with any good strategies to defeat the Allies? Instead, you wanted to shake hands and make peace. After listening to Wang Ling's words, these leaders immediately realized what Wang Ling was thinking. And Wang Ling didn't hide it, and admitted frankly, that's exactly what I said to the leaders. Humph, is it possible? However, it didn't go too smoothly. The general who had previously answered was directly embarrassed. What qualifications do the Allies have to let us shake hands and make peace? Needless to say, this generalissimo was designated as the main fighting faction. In addition, the leader of the main war faction objected, let's not talk about qualifications, just the status of global hegemony and global resources. We can obviously obtain it, why should we give up some of it? At this stage of the war, not only the original war faction, but also the peace faction are vetoing. Wang Ling, your proposal is a bit late. You know, we are passively responding to the war and taking the lead in launching this new war. It is the Allies who are fighting for hegemony. Moreover, as the frontline commander, you, as the frontline commander, should have realized that the Allies are now weak. We can take advantage of this opportunity to defeat the Allies in one round and avoid future troubles. Yes, they fought, and because of Wang Ling's existence, the combat effectiveness of the two major forces was seriously tilted. As the top leadership, they really did not want to give up the victory. Wang Ling had thought about this response in advance, and after all the leaders refused, he persuaded, the Allies are indeed in a weak position now, but if they want to defeat the Allies now, if I don't take action, the Allies will. How much price do we have to pay to achieve this? How much will the economy of the coalition countries decline due to such a long-lasting war? The economic card is a bomb card. Once it was thrown, many leaders on the scene couldn't help but fell silent, especially the original leader, whose eyes flickered. When they first proposed peace, they did not want to continue the war. In addition to the human losses of the war, the economic impact was also their main consideration. However, after passively fighting until now, they have to forcibly persist at the expense of the economy. But Wang Ling mentioned the economy at this time, which really hit their sore spot. However, then the leader of the main war faction denied it. War is about economics, and there is nothing wrong with that. As long as we win the Allies, no matter how big the economic price is, it will be worth it, and the rewards afterwards will be enough to make up for our losses. Wang Ling glanced at the king, sighed, and replied, "Chief, monopolizing global resources is a fantasy in itself. Not to mention that there are many countries in the southern hemisphere. It is quite difficult to occupy resources. Just the Allies, it is not so easy to deal with. As the saying goes, a centipede will never die. Even if we defeat the Allies, will they really be willing to give up their resources? At that time, a huge hostile force will be established, everywhere against us. Unless the Allies are completely wiped out." That's right. However, upgrading the battle for hegemony to a war of annihilation is not only costly, but also very inhumane and completely undesirable. Therefore, after comprehensive consideration, the battle for hegemony between us and the Allies at this stage actually does not make much sense. Wang Ling persuaded him hard as if he was performing a one-man show. At this point, the general marshal of the main war faction was a little dissatisfied. He sneered and asked, "Do you want to fight with the scholars and convince us all by relying on one person's knowledge? Wang Ling, your fighting power it's very strong, I have to admit it, but I'm afraid it's not qualified enough to convince us." This statement indeed choked Wang Ling and made it difficult to respond. Good guy, this is so embarrassing. However, how could Wang Ling compromise so easily? Since ordinary persuasion is not easy to handle, let's use some strong medicine. Chief, let me be arrogant. The current war situation is in our favor. That is because my existence has skewed the balance of combat power. However, if I do not participate in the war and my combat effectiveness is lost, the coalition forces will have to deal with the Allied forces. How long will the stalemate last? The Allies are not lambs waiting to be slaughtered. On the contrary, they have changed their strategies in the battle for hegemony, and have quietly harvested laser UFOs. The threat has increased sharply, and it is not so easy to deal with. Wang Ling stared at the Generalissimo, completely tearing away all modesty, and spoke plausibly, even with a hint of threat. This is playing with fire. PoortoRich felt a little trembling in his heart after hearing this. The Generalissimo was also a little surprised by Wang Ling's attitude, and asked with a stern face, "You are a heroic unit of our coalition, the strongest firepower against the Allies. Under military orders, why don't you join the war? Aren't you afraid of military law?" Wang Ling also refused to give in. Under the military order, I have to obey, but I will contribute some strength. Is this something you can control? I have shown my cards. Before the cholera of the Seoul Empire, I can still focus on everything to deal with the Allies, but after the threat of the Seoul Empire, I really can't find the meaning to continue fighting with the Allies. To be honest, this battle has begun to make me confused. When there is a war, there are sacrifices, and I don't want to watch my group of subordinates continue to lose money, and it's all because of this endless struggle. No matter from the overall situation or from a personal perspective, this battle for hegemony should be over. The two of them are at odds now. During the previous meeting, the war faction and the peace faction actually had similar disputes, but they were all disputes between the top leadership. What is Wang Ling's identity? Even though he is the hero of the entire army, he is only a lieutenant general at best, but now he is fighting against a generalissimo, the supreme commander of the army. PoortoRich will be obedient when he sees him. Boom. As you can imagine, the result was that after being furiously criticized by someone whose military rank was so many ranks lower than his own, the Grand Marshal immediately became angry and slapped the conference table, frightening everyone present except Wang Ling. One jump. He stood up and stared at Wang Ling with a very unkind look on his face. Wang Ling, you are very brave. You dare to talk to me like this and threaten me. Let me ask you again, in the battle for hegemony against the Allies, will you fight or not? No fight. Anyway, the trouble had reached this point. Wang Ling simply gave up and stopped doing Tai Chi. He blocked him with one blow. Okay. 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 These words made the Grand Marshal so angry that his hands were shaking. Even the other leaders at the scene had rarely seen him so angry. Seeing that the scene was full of gunpowder and was about to ignite, PoortoRich wanted to put out the fire quickly. Ha 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 ha. But before he could speak, the Generalissimo's attitude suddenly changed 180 degrees. He laughed heartily, and the gloom on his face dissipated. Finally, with a little appreciative smile, he pointed. Looking at Wang Ling, you, newborn calves are not afraid of tigers. This is the first time I have seen a lieutenant general arguing like this in the most centralized conference hall. I really learned a lot. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 1024. The Marshal's statement was truly abnormal. The change in attitude was so drastic that the other leaders were at a loss as to what to do. Many of them glanced at each other, but did not say much. PoortoRich originally planned to calm down, but now he is a little confused. What does the Generalissimo mean? Wang Ling was also a little confused. Although he looked calm on the surface, in fact, attacking the general made him feel a little nervous. If it weren't for the fact that all the arms he could switch to had been upgraded to the top level, and if something happened, he would just slap his ass and leave, otherwise he would never dare to be so rebellious. However, this emotion was well concealed by him, and he kept his original calmness and asked, "Chief, forgive me for being stupid, do you agree with my statement, or do you want to convict me, already?" Haha, I'm not a smiling tiger. If I want to be punished, I won't have this attitude, the Grand Marshal replied. Wang Ling breathed a sigh of relief, but before he could say the next sentence, the Generalissimo spoke again. However, I don't agree with your statement, I just admire your courage. Wang Ling was stunned for a moment. Admire his courage? Having said so much about co-authoring, is it in vain? You don't have to be disappointed. I don't agree with your statement, but I don't want to deny it in a hurry. In the midst of doubts, the Generalissimo slowly sat down and explained leisurely, in fact, I also want to know about the relationship between the Allied forces. After a long time, the two armies continued their conquest for too long, which was indeed a waste of people and money. Even if they defeated the Allies this time, a long-term confrontation situation in the future can be imagined. During the cholera of the Seoul Empire, when the two armies joined forces, I saw it. We and the Allies are not completely incompatible. But the problem is, I know very well that the top leadership of the Allies are a bunch of old stubborns, and they will definitely not give in. Even if we extend our hands to shake hands and make peace, the other party will you have to reach out to do it. It was precisely because he knew the senior leaders of the Allied forces that the Generalissimo directly acted as the main combatant and confronted the Allied forces tit for tat. In fact, he did not have no intention of truce at all. Of course, it was not only the Generalissimo who had this idea, but also some leaders of other main war factions nodded and agreed with this statement. There were even some leaders of the main war faction who started to act as cowards, and based on the General Marshal's statement, they agreed. After all the warring factions expressed their stance, the leader of the peace-promoting faction pointed out the key points. What Marshal Conway said is exactly what we are worried about. Even if we want a truce, the Allies will not give us face. This battle is still unavoidable. Although they have not yet agreed to Wang Ling's proposal, the attitudes shown by the leaders have already achieved Wang Ling's goal. While these leaders were discussing with each other, Wang Ling smiled and said, "The leaders are absolutely right. To shake hands and make peace, naturally both parties must agree. At this stage, the Allies can directly let them agree, then it's impossible, but we can use some means to force them to agree." What means? Nowadays, these leaders will no longer regard Wang Ling as an ordinary junior student. They must listen to his suggestions. Wang Ling did not give up. We can pass the truce agreement directly to the top leadership of the Allied forces through diplomatic means. This truce agreement is a key point. In order to fish, we can give up most of our interests. In terms of global resource allocation, we only take 40% and give 60% to the Allies. Next, Wang Ling briefly described the truce agreement he envisioned. In addition to the concessions made by the coalition forces in terms of resource allocation, other clauses also favored the Allies in every aspect, such as the right to prioritize the deployment of global strategies and the right to participate in major world conferences. Priority to speak, etc. After hearing this, all the leaders at the scene turned a little dark. PoortoRich even frowned exaggeratedly, not understanding what Wang Ling meant. Boom. Nonsense. After Wang Ling finished speaking, Marshal Conway slapped the conference table to kill his idea. If someone else's ambition destroys his own prestige, we obviously have the upper hand in the battle for hegemony, but we have to give up 60% of our resources. Throwing various priorities to the Allies? Wang Ling, is this your good idea? There are also leaders with unkind expressions. Wang Ling, I even suspect that you have been brainwashed by the Allies. Which aspect of this truce agreement is beneficial to us? Are you forcing the Allies to truce, or are you humiliating and begging for mercy? Other leaders also spoke one after another and accused Wang Ling. However, Wang Ling always looked calm. After listening to the opinions of the leaders, he suppressed his hand and interrupted them. "Chiefs, please be patient, I haven't finished speaking yet. In the truce agreement I mentioned here, it is true that we have made concessions, and there is some compromise, but if this agreement is submitted to the top leadership of the Allied forces, will they agree?" "Them? Who knows," a leader answered without thinking, and he didn't even bother to think about it. However, Marshal Conway's eyes lit up. "I think they will not agree. The Allies' ambitions are no less than ours. They want to occupy the world's resources, not 60% of them. Moreover, if we suddenly submit this kind of truce agreement when we have the advantage, many people may think that we have internal conflicts and are unable to continue the war. Not only will they not agree, but they may do everything possible to delay it." Yes. The words awakened the dreamer, and other leaders also thought of this most likely outcome. However, after he woke up, he was confused again. "Wang Ling, what do you mean? You know they won't agree, but you still do it?" Wang Ling smiled and replied, "Dear leaders, I haven't finished speaking yet. This agreement is just a sample, not the final version." Next, Wang Ling focused on the subsequent changes to the truce agreement and talked about some small private actions. Good. He is a talented person who can think of such tricks. Boil the frog in warm water, apply pressure step by step. Haha, seconds. Using this method, it will be difficult for the Allies to seek peace or not. After Wang Ling finished all the plans, the leaders at the scene were all bright-eyed, completely abandoning their previous prejudices against Wang Ling, and did not hesitate to praise him. "It's really yours." PoortoRich was surprised and sat at the end, secretly chuckling in his heart. Wang Ling did not interrupt them at this moment. He waited until they finished speaking and then asked with a smile, "Chiefs, if the Allies still refuse to let go under this plan, then we will have enough power. There are reasons to defeat or even annihilate them. However, if the Allies compromise midway, can we also call a truce? Haha, it's all said and done, so what's the reason to continue fighting? Truce, truce. Just in time, I don't want to keep hurting the domestic economy, so truce is a good idea. Let's have a truce." Let's talk about Tanya's reaction. Different Dimension Red Alert World. Author, Sanqian Lang. Chapter 1025. After the details of the truce agreement were told, the leaders at the scene finally let go of their obsessions. Whether they were the previous war faction or the peace faction, they all agreed to this plan and were already looking forward to the final truce meeting in their hearts. At this point, Wang Ling's goal was finally achieved. "Wang Ling, you are cruel, are you toying with our allies like this?" After all the leaders unanimously approved the plan, Agent Tanya's voice came out of Wang Ling's mind. Although Wang Ling's truce agreement initially gave too many benefits to the allies, after listening to Wang Ling's details, it was easy to see that this was simply putting pressure on the allies step by step, which fell into Tanya's eyes. Here, it is no different from playing tricks on the allies. However, Wang Ling disagreed and responded in his mind, "Why do you call it teasing? Please, Tanya, can you please be reasonable? Your top leadership of the Allied forces is so stubborn. As an Allied hero, you don't know? Without this method, do you think they will have a truce? And don't forget, our coalition has the upper hand now. If the fight continues, you should know better than me what the consequences will be for your allies. Is being forced into a truce more uncomfortable than being annihilated? You are such a scoundrel." Humph, Tanya couldn't say anything to Wang Ling, so she simply acted coquettishly and stopped talking. "Haha, that's right. A real truce after the incident will be regarded as settling one of our worries. Then you will be the first to win." While the two were talking, Marshal Conway assured with a smile. "Thank you, Chief." Wang Ling did not dare to be too proud and quickly responded with a military salute. The meeting could be over at this point, but it was rare that Wang Ling came to the door on his own initiative. A group of leaders would not let him go so easily. After talking about the business, the leaders of the group put down their previous dignity one by one, and one of the leaders proposed to experience time and space movement. "Good guy, this skill is really a panacea, it has so many practical uses, especially since Wang Ling can move people with him, that's really enviable." However, most of the leaders of their group are already old and cannot afford to receive special training as Chrono Legion soldiers. They can only use Wang Ling's ability to take the opportunity to experience it. As soon as the proposal was put forward, it was immediately approved by the leaders of all walks of life, and Wang Ling naturally would not refuse. After all the leaders, even several marshals and PoortoRich were ready, Wang Ling began to release the superdimensional wave circle, taking everyone on a journey of traveling through time and space. The direction and location of this movement completely depended on the thoughts of the leaders. Wang Ling took them to visit the capitals of all member states, past some iconic attractions, and experienced the customs of each country. And then brought all the leaders to the war front line and landed in General Luo Er's base. Who are these people? They are all kings of various member states, and even general marshals. Several of the marshals are at the end of the spectrum. PoortoRich doesn't dare to breathe among them. This lineup, no matter where it falls, can cause 3 shocks, let alone the front-line battlefield. After the 4 major field groups saw it, many people were frightened. General Luo Er hurriedly jumped out of the command post and ran to the leaders 3 times in a row. He stumbled a little when he saluted and said hello. Later, at the urging of General Luo Er, the leaders and captains of the 4 major field groups quickly came with elites from all walks of life to salute. PoortoRich acted as the commentator at this time, telling the leaders about the origins and achievements of the A-space. During the explanation, the leaders from all walks of life also praised him from time to time, making everyone in the 4 major field groups proud. Fully. While taking advantage of the explanation time, General Luo pinched Wang Ling, and said with some resentment in his eyes, "My dear, top leadership. Why didn't you bring so many important people here in advance? Let me know. Damn it, we are completely unprepared. What if we make a fool of ourselves? Wouldn't it be embarrassing?" Wang Ling was wronged. "General, it's not my fault. I didn't want to bring them here. It was a leader's temporary proposal to come over. I can't refuse, right? Moreover, they just said they would come to the front line to have a look, and they didn't say where they were. I brought this base directly to us. Why don't I give you a face? Hey, he has a long face, I'm convinced. I can brag to others about today's matter for the rest of my life." General Luo smiled. "The record of the A-space is really brilliant. If you want to tell it all in one go, it won't be done in a short while." PoortoRich simply talked about the key points in general. After these narrations were completed, the leaders walked around again under the guidance of General Luo, and then Wang Ling led them back to the Hungta conference room. "Ha ha ha, it's really just like a dream. This feeling is really good. It makes me feel the impulse of my youth. If I weren't old, I would have to train myself no matter what. I never dreamed before that it only took more than an hour to visit the capitals of 15 member states and inspect the front lines. Not to mention, the technology of the Allied forces is indeed superior to them. It's not a loss in exchange for this technology. This is over. It's a pity that we haven't had enough fun yet. Wang Ling, remember to come and visit us old people often in the future. Ha ha ha, are you thinking about someone else's chrono movement? At the end of the time travel journey, all the leaders felt happy and laughed. This emotion had not appeared on their faces for a long time. By now, Wang Ling had finally finished all he could do. After bidding farewell to all the leaders, Wang Ling took PoortoRich back to the headquarters, bid farewell to PoortoRich again, and finally returned to the base. A plan to put pressure on the Allies had emerged and was on the agenda. After Wang Ling rested briefly in the base for a day, the plan began to be officially implemented. On the Allied side, the truce agreement was submitted to the Allied military headquarters and top leadership in a diplomatic manner, and at the same time, the contents of the agreement were revealed intentionally or unintentionally. As expected, this agreement caused an uproar as soon as it came out, and the officers and soldiers of both armies looked in disbelief. Except for the top leadership, no one else knew the entire process of this plan. After learning the contents of the agreement, the coalition forces were predictably angry and confused. They clearly have the upper hand in the battle for hegemony. If they continue to attack, the Allies will definitely lose. It was enough to propose a truce at this time, but in the truce agreement, it favored the Allies in every aspect and gave up most of the interests and rights to the Allies. What kind of weak behavior is this?